They say the strongest wolves mate for life, but Atlas Ravencrest had learned that love was the deadliest poison an alpha king could swallow. He'd sworn his oath in blood 7 years ago, no mate, no Luna, no weakness, until a single sob in the winter darkness shattered every wall he'd built around his dead heart. The crying had started 3 months ago, always after midnight, always from the abandoned tower where they kept broken things. Senna pressed her scarred palms against the frozen stone, counting each breath like prayer beads. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. The technique her grandmother had taught her before the hunters came. Before she learned that healing gifts became death sentences when the world discovered you weren't quite human. 3 years she'd served as Ironhold Fortress's lowliest caretaker, the silent girl who cleaned the abandoned wings where no one ventured, who wore gloves even in summer to hide the silvery scars that marked her as something other. The Veil Walkers, her people, were supposed to be extinct, burned out root and stem when King Atlas's father discovered they could walk between worlds, could touch souls and mend them or break them with equal ease. She'd been 14 when she watched her village burn, when her grandmother pushed her through a tear in reality itself, making her promise to become nothing, no one, invisible. Now at 22, Senna had perfected the art of invisibility. She moved through Ironhold like morning mist, arriving before dawn to clean the abandoned tower, disappearing before the fortress truly woke. The other servants thought her mute, traumatized by some unspeakable tragedy. They weren't entirely wrong, but maintaining the facade grew harder each winter. The cold made her gift restless, made it claw at her chest like a caged bird. Some nights, when the moon hung heavy and the temperature dropped below freezing, she couldn't contain it anymore. The pain would build until she had to release it somewhere, somehow. So she cried not normal tears, but something that froze midair into crystalline drops that sang with otherworldly sorrow. Each tear carried a fragment of suppressed power. Each sob released pressure that might otherwise tear her apart from the inside. She thought the abandoned tower was safe. No one climbed those stairs anymore, not since Queen Alara Atlas's mother had thrown herself from its height 7 years ago. The servants whispered it was cursed, haunted by the Mad Queen's ghost. Even the fortress guards avoided patrol routes that passed too close. Tonight felt different. The pressure wasn't just from suppressed power, but something else, something that made her skin prickle with awareness. As she climbed the spiraling stairs, her scarred hands trembling despite the thick gloves, she could feel it a pull like gravity, like fate, like every mistake she'd ever run from catching up at once. The temperature had plummeted to depths that made breathing hurt. Perfect. The colder it was, the faster her tears would crystallize, the less evidence she'd leave behind. She pushed open the tower door and stumbled onto the snow-covered balcony where Queen Alara had stood for the last time. That's when she felt him a presence that made her gift surge so violently she gasped. The attack had come during the Harvest Moon Festival, when Veilwalkers traditionally thinned the boundaries between worlds to bless the coming winter. Senna remembered the exact moment everything changed, her mother's eyes widening as iron-tipped arrows pierced the ceremonial veils, her father's roar as he shifted into his ethereal form to buy them time. Veilwalkers weren't werewolves or witches. They were something older, rarer beings who existed partially in multiple realities simultaneously. In their true forms, they appeared as luminous figures wrapped in gossamer veils that showed glimpses of other worlds, other possibilities. They could reach through these veils to heal injuries by pulling from realities where the wound never happened, or destroy by pushing someone into realities where they never existed. The old king, Thaddeus Ravencrest, had discovered their settlement by accident. His young Queen Alara had been dying from a wasting sickness no healer could cure. Desperate, he'd sought the Veilwalkers, and Senna's grandmother had saved her, pulling through the veils to find a reality where Alara had never sickened. But the king had seen too much. He'd seen the power they wielded, the threat they could pose. Within a moon's turn, he returned with an army and weapons, blessed by the Order of the Iron Moon Hunters, who specialized in killing the supernatural. Senna had been in the healing chambers with her grandmother when the screaming started. Through the crystalline walls, she watched her mother fall, her veils burning away like tissue paper. Her father lasted longer, long enough to scream at grandmother to run, to take Senna, and tear through the veils to safety. "You must become nothing," her grandmother had whispered, pressing a vial of silvery liquid into Senna's hands as the hunter's howls grew closer. "Drink this. It will suppress your nature, make you seem human. Find work where no one looks closely. Never use your gift unless death is the only alternative. And never, Ever let them see you cry? The potion had burned like swallowing molten silver. It had compressed her multidimensional nature into a single, flat, human-seeming form. The pain had been so intense she'd passed out, waking up alone at a crossroads with nothing but the clothes on her back and scars across her palms where her veils had been forcibly severed. For 3 years, she'd survived by becoming exactly what her grandmother commanded: nothing. The mute girl who cleaned what others wouldn't touch, who lived in the servants' quarters' darkest corner, who never complained when given the worst tasks. But the potion's effectiveness was waning. Each month required higher doses to maintain her disguise, and she'd run out 6 weeks ago. Now her true nature fought to resurface. The tears were just the beginning. Sometimes, when she wasn't careful, she'd catch her reflection showing multiple versions of herself, each one making different choices. Once, a servant girl had seen Senna's shadow split into 3 different directions. Senna had convinced her it was a trick of the light, but suspicion had crept into the girl's eyes. Winter made it worse. The cold thinned the boundaries between worlds, made her gift stronger, harder to contain. And this winter felt different, charged with possibility and danger. She'd started having dreams of burning veils, of a wolf with eyes like liquid mercury, of a queen falling not from a tower but into somewhere else entirely. King Atlas Ravencrest stood at his war room's window, watching snow fall like ash across Ironhold Fortress. 7 years since his mother's death. 7 years since he'd learned that love was just another word for vulnerability. The anniversary always made his wolf restless, made it pace the cage of his consciousness with increasing aggression. Your Majesty. His beta, Commander Rook, entered with practiced silence. The Northern Territories report unusual activities. Lights in the sky that move against the wind, rivers running backward for heartbeats at a time. The same phenomena as last month? Atlas didn't turn from the window. At 31, he cut an imposing figure, raven black hair, shoulders that carried the weight of a kingdom, and eyes that had turned silver the night his mother died, never returning to their original brown. Worse. The Oracle believes the boundaries are thinning. She says something old is stirring, something that should have stayed dead. Atlas's jaw tightened. The Oracle spoke in riddles, but her warnings had never been wrong. Double the patrols. If something's coming through. He stopped mid-sentence. His wolf, silent for months, suddenly surged to the surface with such violence that his eyes flashed fully silver. Through the frost-covered window, across the courtyard, and up the abandoned tower, something called to him. Not a sound, but a pull in his chest like a fishhook through his ribs. Sire? Rook stepped forward, concerned. There's someone in my mother's tower. Impossible. It's been sealed since. But Atlas was already moving, his body shifting partially as he crossed the room, not full wolf, but something between. His mother's tower had been his one order that no one disobeyed. No one entered. No one cleaned. It remained as she'd left it. A tomb of memories he couldn't bear to face. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his enhanced hearing picking up something that made his wolf howl, internally crying, but not normal tears. These sobs carried harmonics that shouldn't exist, frequencies that made reality shiver. As he climbed higher, frost began forming on the stone walls, but not regular ice. This frost showed images, fragments of other places, other times. He reached the tower door and found it ajar, winter wind whistling through the gap. Inside, he could hear her now clearly. Each sob was like glass breaking in reverse, like time folding in on itself. His wolf clawed desperately at his control, demanding he burst through, demanding he claim what was his. Atlas pushed the door open silently and stopped, everything in him going still. A girl knelt in the snow on the balcony, her back to him, wearing the rough-spun clothes of a servant. But around her, reality was wrong. The snowflakes fell in impossible patterns, some rising instead of falling, others frozen midair in crystalline formations that reflected not the fortress but other places, a burning village, a queen falling, a wolf with silver eyes. As he watched, she raised her hands to her face, and he saw the scars across her palms, silvery, lines that pulsed with faint light. When her tears hit the snow, they didn't disappear. They transformed into ice crystals that sang a melody he recognized but couldn't place, a song his mother had hummed in her final days when madness took her. The girl's crying intensified, and the very air began to crack like a mirror under pressure. Through those cracks, Atlas glimpsed other worlds' versions of this moment where different choices had been made. In one, his mother still lived. In another, the fortress burned. In yet another, he saw himself holding this crying girl, both of them crowned in moonlight. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice carrying the authority of an alpha king. Senna froze, her tears crystallizing mid-fall into a shower of singing ice that hung suspended between them. She didn't turn, couldn't turn. His voice had hit her like a physical force, but worse was what her gift was, showing her dozens of potential futures spreading from this moment like cracks in glass. In half of them, she died before dawn. "I asked you a question." Atlas stepped onto the balcony, noting how the snow beneath her knees had formed perfect spirals, mathematical patterns that spoke of power barely contained. "No one enters this tower." She stood slowly, keeping her back to him, her scarred hands pulling her hood forward to hide her face. When she tried to step past him, he moved to block her path, not touching, but close enough that she had to stop or collide with him. "You're the mute servant girl, the one who cleans the abandoned wings." It wasn't a question. He'd seen her in passing, a shadow at the edge of vision. "Except you're not mute, are you? I heard you crying." Senna kept her head down, but nodded once. The gesture was meant to seem submissive, but Atlas caught the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twitched toward her palms, as if checking the scars were still hidden by her gloves. "Show me your face." She shook her head, a sharp, desperate movement. That wasn't a request. He let his alpha command ripple through the words, the power that could force any wolf to submit. But she didn't submit. Instead, she stumbled backward, and he heard her gasp, not in defiance, but in pain. The alpha command had hit something inside her, but instead of forcing obedience, it had caused actual damage. A drop of silver blood fell from her nose, steaming as it hit the snow. Interesting. Atlas moved closer, his wolf practically howling now. "You're not a wolf, but my command affects you, yet you can resist." He circled her slowly, predatorily. "What are you?" Senna finally raised her head, and their eyes met. The impact was instantaneous and devastating. Her eyes were human in shape, but wrong in every other way. They held depth, like looking into a well that reflected not sky but entire galaxies. Layers of color that shifted and changed, showing different versions of herself looking back at him. Atlas's wolf surged so violently he partially shifted without meaning to claws, extending, eyes going fully silver, canines dropping. But instead of attack, his wolf wanted something else. It wanted to claim, to protect, to possess. The word mate screamed through his mind with such force he took a step back. "No." The word tore from him, rough and desperate. "I swore an oath, no mate, never again." Senna's eyes widened in understanding and horror. She felt it too, the pull between them like gravity increasing, like two magnets fighting against the space keeping them apart. But more terrifying was what her gift was showing her. In every reality where they touched, the world changed. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but always irrevocably. "I should go," she whispered, her voice rusty from disuse but carrying those same harmonics he'd heard in her crying. The sound made his wolf whine. "You're bleeding, Silver." He pointed to the drops still steaming in the snow. "No human bleeds silver." "I'm not..." She caught herself, but too late. "Not human," Atlas finished. "No, you're not. The question is, what are you, and why are you in my mother's tower?" His eyes narrowed. "This is where she died. Where she jumped 7 years ago. Unless..." He moved so fast she couldn't react, grabbing her wrist. The moment their skin made contact, even through her glove, the world exploded. Images flashed between them, memories that weren't quite memories, truths that weren't quite truths. He saw his mother not jumping, but being pulled into a tear in reality. Saw beings of light and veil trying to save her. Saw a young girl with scarred palms watching from between worlds as Queen Alara fell not down but through. Senna wrenched away, but the damage was done. Where his hand had touched, her glove had dissolved, revealing the silvery scars that pulsed with otherworldly light. "Veilwalker." The word came out as a growl. "You're a fucking Veilwalker." The throne room had never been colder. Atlas had called an emergency gathering, and the nobility of Ironhold arrived wrapped in furs and suspicion. At the room's center, Senna knelt in iron chains, the metal burning against her skin but keeping her gift suppressed enough that she couldn't tear through reality to escape. "Your Majesty?" Duke Cassius spoke first, his scarred face a map of battles fought. "What crime has this servant committed to warrant such display?" Atlas sat on his throne of black oak and iron, his silver eyes never leaving Senna's bowed head. He'd spent 3 hours after discovering her researching, confirming what his wolf already knew: she was his mate, and she was the very creature his father had tried to make extinct. "She stands accused of supernatural deception," Atlas announced, his voice echoing off stone walls. "Of living among us while hiding her true nature." Whispers erupted. In the years since the Veilwalker purge, paranoia about hidden supernaturals had become embedded in the kingdom's consciousness. Parents checked their children for signs, lovers tested each other with iron and silver, neighbors reported suspicious behavior. "Bring forth the truth seeker," Atlas commanded. The doors opened, admitting a figure that made everyone step back. Mordain, the last of the truth seekers, walked with the confidence of someone who'd outlived empires. His gift was simple and terrible: he could compel absolute truth from anyone he touched. Even Atlas himself couldn't resist that power. But Mordain wasn't alone. Beside him walked someone who made Atlas's wolf snarl: Princess Valdris of the Eastern Territories, dressed in white leather and silver mail, her platinum hair braided with iron bells that chimed with each step. She'd arrived yesterday, ostensibly for trade negotiations. Atlas suspected she'd come hunting for a queen's throne. "Lord Mordain," Atlas nodded to the ancient truth-seeker. "Test the accused." Mordain approached Senna, his weathered hand reaching for her face. The moment he made contact, she convulsed, and the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Frost spread from where she knelt, but not normal ice. This frost showed reflections of other worlds, other possibilities. "Speak your true name," Mordain commanded. "Senna Nightvale." Her voice came out layered, as if multiple versions of her spoke simultaneously. "What are you?" "The last Veilwalker in this realm." Gasps echoed through the hall. Several nobles reached for weapons. "Why are you here?" "I had nowhere else to go." Tears began falling from her eyes, each drop crystallizing into singing ice before hitting the floor. "Everyone else is dead." "Did you kill Queen Alara?" "No." The word rang with such truth that even Mordain stepped back. "I tried to save her. She was being pulled through the veils by something that should not exist. I held her as long as I could, but I was only 14. Too weak. I watched her fall through realities, until she found one where jumping was her choice." Atlas stood abruptly, his throne cracking under the force. "You were there? You saw my mother die?" "I see everyone die." Senna's voice broke, harmonics shattering like glass. "In infinite variations, it's the curse of walking between veils. I see every choice, every possibility, every ending." She looked up at him with those impossible eyes. "I see yours too, King Atlas. 7 different ways you die, 12 ways you live, 3 where you never existed at all." "Blasphemy." Princess Valdris stepped forward, producing a vial of blessed silver water. "Your Majesty, this creature admits to witnessing your mother's death and doing nothing. The law demands." "I know what the law demands." Atlas cut her off, but his eyes remained on Senna. His wolf was raging, demanding he protect their mate, while his king's duty demanded justice. Valdris ignored his warning, unstoppering the vial. "Then you know we must test if she's truly the monster she claims." Before anyone could stop her, she threw the water at Senna. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. Where the blessed silver touched skin, Senna's human disguise burned away, revealing something underneath that made even hardened warriors step back. Her true form flickered between dimensions, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent, wrapped in veils that showed glimpses of other worlds. Her screams harmonized with themselves, creating a chord that shattered every piece of glass in the throne room. But Atlas was already moving, his wolf taking control. He caught Senna as she collapsed, pulling her against him despite the way her shifting form made reality bend around them. The mate bond roared to life, and everyone in the throne room felt it, the magical joining that marked them as destined pairs. "Mine," Atlas growled, the word carrying such primal authority that Valdris dropped to her knees. "Anyone who touches her again dies." Senna ran through Ironhold's corridors, her form flickering, between human and Veilwalker with each step. Behind her, she could hear Atlas pursuing. His footsteps deliberate, patient, like he knew exactly where she would go. The mate bond pulled at her chest, a chain made of starlight and shadow that grew tighter with distance. She burst through the door to the castle's highest parapet, where snow fell upward and the aurora borealis painted impossible colors across the sky. Here, at the boundary between earth and void, her power was strongest. She could tear through, escape to another reality where Atlas Ravencrest never existed, where mate bonds were just stories. You can't run from this. His voice came from directly behind her, though she hadn't heard him arrive. Trust me, I've tried. She spun to find him standing in the doorway, no longer pursuing but waiting. His silver eyes held exhaustion deeper than his 31 years should carry. You swore never to take a mate, Senna said, her veils whipping around her in ethereal wind. The whole kingdom knows King Atlas's oath. No Luna, no weakness, no love. You've refused every match for 7 years. Because of what I am. He stepped onto the parapet, and for the first time, Senna saw him truly shift. Not into a wolf, but into something else, something wrong. His form expanded and contracted simultaneously, existing in multiple states at once. Shadow and substance, wolf and man, and something older that predated both. You're not pure werewolf, she breathed, recognizing the impossible nature of what stood before her. My mother wasn't mad when she jumped, Atlas said, his form stabilizing but remaining partially shifted. She was changing. My father's bloodline carries a curse we're descended from the void wolves, the ones who hunted between worlds before the realms were separated. Every few generations, it manifests. He laughed bitterly. My mother thought marrying into the bloodline would dilute it. Instead, it activated in me the night she died. That's why you could resist telling Mordain everything, why the mate bond works between us even though I'm not a wolf. Senna's veils calmed, wrapping around her like protective silk. You're a boundary walker too. I exist between states, Atlas confirmed. Never fully wolf, never fully human, never fully in one reality. I can step sideways through dimensions for heartbeats at a time, see the spaces between worlds. It's why I knew you weren't human the moment you cried in my mother's tower. Your tears opened doorways. Your father knew, didn't he? What you were becoming. Atlas's expression darkened. He tried to burn it out of me. Iron chains, blessed silver, holy water, anything to keep me locked in this reality. When that failed, he turned his attention to eliminating anything that might trigger the curse further. His eyes met hers, like veil walkers. Understanding crashed over Senna like a wave. The purge wasn't about power or threat, it was about you. He thought if all the boundary walkers were gone, I'd never fully manifest. He was wrong. Atlas moved closer, and reality rippled around them. The night he died, I lost control, shifted between dimensions uncontrollably. I existed in 17 different realities simultaneously, saw 17 different versions of his death, some natural, some not. I still don't know which one was real. They all were, Senna said softly. That's the curse of seeing between veils. Every possibility is equally true, until observed. You didn't kill him in this reality, but you did in others. How do you live with it? The question came out raw, desperate. Seeing everything, knowing that every choice splits the world? I cry, she admitted, gesturing to the frozen tears that still decorated the parapet like deadly ornaments. Each tear carries a fragment of possibility I can't hold anymore. It's why they sing their pieces of unrealized futures. Atlas reached out, catching one of the frozen tears. Instead of cutting his palm, it melted at his touch, and for a moment he saw what she saw, a future where they ruled together, where Veilwalkers and Void Wolves created a kingdom between realms, where their children walked freely between worlds. Beautiful, he breathed. Impossible, she countered. The princess was right. Your kingdom demands my death. The law, I am the law. His voice carried the authority of kings and the power of the void. And I've spent 7 years refusing a mate because I thought love made me weak. But you know what I've learned? He cupped her face, his touch making her veils shimmer. Denying your nature is the true weakness. I've been dying slowly, splitting apart at the seams. Then I heard you crying, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt whole. There's something else, Atlas said, pulling back but keeping one hand on her arm, anchoring them both to this reality. The disturbances, Commander Rook reported the backwards rivers. The lights in the sky they started 3 months ago, the same time you began crying in the tower. Senna's eyes widened. That's impossible. I was careful. Your tears were creating soft spots between worlds. Each time you released that suppressed power, you weakened the boundaries. He guided her to the parapet's edge, where the aurora above them showed unnatural patterns. Look closer. She did, letting her vision shift to see between veils, and gasped. The lights weren't just aurora, they were tears in reality itself, showing glimpses of other dimensions bleeding through. Something's been feeding on those tears, Atlas continued, growing stronger each time you cry. The Oracle calls it the hunger, an entity from the void between worlds that consumes possibility itself. The thing that pulled your mother through, Senna whispered, pieces falling into place. It wasn't trying to kill her. It was trying to create an opening, a wound between worlds large enough to come through. And when that failed, it waited. Atlas's form flickered, showing multiple versions of himself as his control slipped. Waited for another boundary walker to create fresh tears. You've been feeding it without knowing. Before Senna could respond, the aurora above them began to writhe unnaturally. The lights condensed, spiraling down toward the fortress like a living thing. Where it touched stone, reality warped walls, aging centuries in seconds, then reversing to before they were built, existing in all states simultaneously. From within the chaos stepped a figure that made both of them stagger. It looked like Queen Alara, but wrong, she existed in multiple iterations overlapping incorrectly. Young and old, living and dead, human and something else entirely. My son, the thing wearing Alara's face, spoke with harmonics that made reality shiver. And the little Veilwalker who tried to save me. How poetic that you've found each other. You're not my mother, Atlas, snarled, partially shifting into his void wolf form. I am every version of your mother that could have been. The entity responded, its form constantly shifting between possibilities. The ones who lived, who died, who transcended. The hunger showed me the truth, why exist in one reality when you can exist in all? That's not existence. Senna stepped forward, her veils flaring. That's consumption. You're devouring possibilities, erasing futures. Says the girl who cries away unwanted realities. The Alara, things smiled with too many mouths. Each tear you shed is a world unmade, a future denied. We're not so different. She gestured, and the fortress began to shift, walls becoming translucent, showing multiple versions of Ironhold existing simultaneously. In some, it was ruins. In others, it had never been built. The overlapping realities made everyone inside scream as they experienced multiple versions of themselves at once. Stop, Atlas commanded, his voice carrying void authority. I can't, the entity admitted, sounding genuinely surprised. That's what you don't understand. Once you start existing between worlds, you can't stop. You can only consume or be consumed. Your little mate has been bleeding possibility for months. I've been feeding on it, growing strong enough to finally tear through. And now that I'm here. She spread her arms, and cracks appeared in the air itself. I'm going to show this world the truth of infinite possibility. There's a way to stop her, Senna said quietly to Atlas. But it means revealing what we both really are, fully manifesting. Atlas understood immediately. We'll lose control, might not come back. Or we might become something new. She took his hand, and where their skin touched, reality stabilized in a small sphere around them. The Void Wolf and the Veilwalker. Destruction and creation. We're opposites, but also balance, he finished. My mother knew. It's why she was coming to the Veilwalkers. That night years ago, before the hunger caught her. She'd figured out what I was becoming and sought the only beings who could help. The Alara thing laughed, the sound fracturing into multiple tones. You think your bond can stop me? I exist in every reality now. Kill me in one, and I persist in infinite others. Then we'll just have to kill you in all of them, Atlas said, his form beginning to shift fully. Together, Senna agreed, letting her human disguise finally fall away completely. As Atlas and Senna prepared to fully manifest, the Alara thing's form suddenly convulsed. Her multiple faces showed fear for the first time. No, she whispered, looking at something behind them that existed in another dimension. You promised. You said if I opened the way. A new voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, ancient beyond measure. You've served your purpose, little echo. The temperature dropped to absolute zero. Through the tears in reality stepped something that predated, form itself the true hunger. It appeared as absence rather than presence, a void in the shape of something almost human but fundamentally wrong. Where it existed, possibility itself died. Rasputin. Senna breathed, recognizing the entity from her grandmother's oldest warnings. The first Veilwalker who tried to exist in all realities at once. Hello, granddaughter, the void said, and its voice was the sound of endings. Atlas stepped protectively in front of Senna. Granddaughter? Did she not tell you? Rasputin laughed, the sound deleting small portions of reality. The night veil line descends from me. I was the first to walk between veils. The first to see the truth that reality is just a consensus, a cage built of collective belief. He gestured, and the Alara thing dissolved, her possibilities condensing into a single point that he absorbed. I've spent centuries in the void between worlds, growing stronger, waiting for one of my bloodline to weaken the boundaries. Enough for my return. My grandmother warned me about you, Senna said, her veils whipping wildly around her. You're why the other Veilwalkers feared our bloodline, why some wanted us exiled even before the purge. Your grandmother was a fool, binding herself to a single reality, teaching you to hide, to suppress, to diminish. Rasputin moved closer, and flowers withered, stone-aged, time itself grew uncertain. But you, little one, you've been crying tears of pure possibility for months, each one a doorway, an invitation. Did you think your grief was yours alone? I've been shaping it, nurturing it, feeding it back to you amplified. You're why I couldn't stop crying, Senna realized with horror. You've been pulling at my gift from the other side. And now I offer you a choice. Rasputin extended a hand made of living void. Join me. Embrace your true heritage. Together, we can remake reality itself, exist as gods between worlds, shape possibility to our will. Or, he gestured to Atlas. Stay here with your void wolf, playing at being human, until time claims you both. She's not going anywhere with you, Atlas snarled, his form beginning to shift into the full void wolf. Ah. The cursed king speaks. Rasputin turned his attention to Atlas, and reality wavered. Do you know why your bloodline carries the void wolf curse? Your ancestors hunted my kind between worlds. They were our natural predators. Before we learned to turn that hunger against itself. Your curse isn't random, it's revenge, encoded into your very essence by dying Veilwalkers. You're programmed to hunt us, to desire us, to destroy us. You're lying, Atlas growled, but uncertainty flickered in his silver eyes. Am I? Tell me, young king, what did you feel when you first sensed her? Protection? Love? Rasputin smiled with a mouth that wasn't there. Or hunger? The need to possess? To consume? To claim? Your void wolf doesn't love her, it wants to devour her possibility. Add her power to yours. It's what you were made for. Senna felt Atlas stiffen beside her, felt his horror through their bond as he examined his own instincts and found truth in the accusation. Even if that's true, Senna said, stepping between them, he chose differently. He protected me, defended me, refused to let them hurt me. For now. Rasputin circled them, leaving trails of nothingness in his wake. But the hunger always wins. I've seen it in every reality, void wolves and Veilwalkers drawn together, mating. And then the wolf consumes the walker's power, leaving them empty husks while the wolf transcends into something monstrous. He paused. It's how the void wolves originally gained the ability to walk between worlds. They ate us. The revelation hung in the air like a death sentence. Atlas stepped back from Senna, his face stricken. I won't. I would never. You won't have a choice, Rasputin interrupted. It's instinct, deeper than thought. The moment you fully mate, the moment you complete the bond, the hunger will activate. You'll drain her dry and hate yourself for it, but you'll do it anyway. Unless, he continued, addressing Senna again, you come with me. Learn to exist beyond the reach of void wolves, beyond the limitations of flesh and reality. Become what you were meant to be infinite. I've heard enough, Atlas roared, his form exploding into the full void wolf, a creature of living darkness with eyes like dying stars, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. He lunged at Rasputin with reality-breaking speed. The collision shook the foundations of existence itself. Where Void Wolf met Primordial Veilwalker, the world screamed. Atlas's claws, capable of cutting through dimensions, met Rasputin's form of living absence, creating paradoxes that spiraled outward in waves. Senna watched in horror as Atlas fought with savage grace, each strike designed to kill across multiple realities at once. But Rasputin simply existed around the attacks, letting them pass through spaces where he wasn't. Predictable. Rasputin sighed, gesturing lazily. The air around Atlas solidified into crystallized possibility, trapping him mid-leap. The Void Wolves always were more instinct than intellect. Atlas struggled against the prison, his form flickering through dimensions, trying to find one where he wasn't trapped. Each attempt weakened him, his existence spreading too thin across realities. "Stop," Senna cried, her veils extending toward Atlas. "You're killing him." "No, child, I'm showing you what he really is." Rasputin tightened the trap, and Atlas's void wolf form began to destabilize, revealing something beneath a core of pure hunger, an endless appetite that wanted to devour everything, including her. But as Senna reached Atlas, her veils wrapping around him, something unexpected happened. Instead of her power being drained, their essences began to harmonize. The hunger in him met the creation in her, and instead of consumption, there was exchange, a perfect circuit of power flowing between them. "Impossible." Rasputin stepped back, his void form flickering with uncertainty. "You're wrong about the hunger," Senna said, understanding flooding through her as their bond deepened. "It's not meant to consume, it's meant to complete. Void wolves don't devour Veilwalkers. They're meant to anchor us, keep us from dissolving into infinite possibility." She pulled Atlas free from the crystallized trap, their combined power shattering it easily. As he returned to his hybrid form, she saw the truth in his silver eyes, not hunger for her power, but hunger for her, for connection, for something to keep him grounded in reality. "And Veilwalkers," Atlas continued, his voice harmonizing with hers, "are meant to show void wolves that existence isn't about consuming possibility, but choosing it." They stood together, hand in hand, as their powers fully merged. Around them, reality stabilized in a perfect sphere while chaos raged beyond. Rasputin attacked with the fury of collapsed realities, throwing deleted futures and erased pasts at them. But their combined nature, void and veil, hunger and creation, choice and consumption, formed a shield that transformed each attack into something new. "You cannot defeat me," Rasputin raged, his form expanding to encompass the entire sky. "I am the space between breaths, the pause between heartbeats. I am inevitability itself." "Your fear," Senna corrected, her understanding complete now. "You were the first to see between veils, and it terrified you. So you tried to control it, to exist everywhere, so you could never be surprised, never be vulnerable. But in trying to be everything, you became nothing. We offer you a choice," Atlas added, his void wolf nature perfectly balanced with his human will. "Return to the void willingly, or we'll show you something you've forgotten in your centuries of existence, what it means to be bound to a single moment, a single choice, a single reality." Rasputin laughed, the sound deleting portions of the fortress below. "You think you can force me into a single reality? I exist in infinite." He stopped mid-sentence as Senna began to cry. But these weren't tears of suppressed power or grief. These were tears of pure choice, each one a reality where Rasputin had chosen differently, where he'd stayed mortal, where he'd loved, where he'd accepted limitation. The tears crystallized in the air, forming a prison of possibilities that could have been. Atlas added his power, his void wolf nature not consuming but defining, creating boundaries around each possibility, making them real and finite and beautiful in their limitation. No, Rasputin tried to escape, but everywhere he turned, he met another version of himself that had chosen differently. The grandfather who had taught young Veilwalkers with patience, the man who had loved and lost and accepted both, the mortal who had died peacefully, surrounded by family. "This is torture," he gasped, his form condensing, becoming more solid as the possibilities pressed in. "This is truth," Senna said gently. "Every choice we don't make is a death. You've been trying to avoid choosing, to exist in all states. But that's not life, it's paralysis." Rasputin's form continued to condense, pulled by the weight of unmade choices. His void-like existence fought against the limitation, creating reality storms that shattered what remained of the fortress's highest towers. Below, the kingdom watched in terror, as the sky itself seemed to war with itself. If I fall, I take this reality with me, Rasputin threatened, his essence beginning to collapse into a singularity of negation. I'll create a wound in existence that will never heal. Then we'll heal it as it forms, Senna said, looking at Atlas. Together, understanding passed between them without words. They'd been thinking of their powers as opposite void and veil, hunger and creation. But what if they weren't opposites at all? What if they were two halves of the same force? The void between worlds isn't empty, Atlas said, his silver eyes blazing with revelation. It's potential. And veils aren't barriers, Senna added, her own understanding crystallizing. They're membranes, meant to be permeable, to allow exchange. They joined hands fully, and their forms began to merge, not replacing each other, but creating something new. Atlas's void wolf nature provided structure, definition, the hunger that gave shape to formlessness. Senna's Veilwalker essence provided possibility, creation, the infinite potential that filled the void. Together, they became something that had no name because it had never existed before, a living bridge between realities, a conscious choice that could exist in multiple states without losing definition. Rasputin's collapsing form met their expanding one, and instead of destruction, there was transformation. His hunger to exist everywhere met their ability to exist anywhere but by choice, not compulsion. The singularity he was becoming reversed, not exploding outward but inverting, folding into itself until it became something else entirely. What are you doing to me? Rasputin's voice was small now, almost human. Giving you what you've forgotten you wanted, Senna said through their merged form. A home, a single reality to belong to choose, to love. But I'll die, he whispered. If I exist in just one reality, time will claim me. Everything dies, Atlas's voice joined Senna's. That's what makes life precious. The limitation is the gift. They pulled Rasputin through their bridge, form, filtering his dispersed existence through their combined nature. What emerged on the other side wasn't the primordial hunger that had terrorized realities, but an old man, ancient, tired, but undeniably alive and present in a single moment. He collapsed onto ruined parapet, solid flesh touching stone for the first time in centuries. When he looked up, his eyes were human, one brown, one gray, filled with tears that were just salt and water. I remember, he gasped. I remember being young, being afraid, being mortal. Senna and Atlas separated, both exhausted but transformed. They weren't fully their original selves anymore. Atlas's eyes held flecks of starlight among the silver, while Senna's veils were shot through with threads of void dark that gave them definition and strength. The tears in reality, Atlas said, looking up at the sky where wounds still gaped between worlds. We need to heal them. Not heal, Senna corrected, understanding their new nature. Transform. Together, they reached out to the tears Rasputin had created. But instead of closing them, they did something else. They turned them into doorways. Controlled passages between realities, bounded by Atlas's void nature and made traversable by Senna's veils. Each door would require choice to pass through, intention, acceptance of consequence. Throughout Ironhold, people who had been experiencing multiple versions of themselves suddenly snapped back into single forms. But they remembered the other possibilities, the other choices. It didn't drive them mad. Instead, it gave them perspective, empathy for the paths not taken. What have you done? Rasputin asked, watching reality restructure itself around their intervention. We've given the world what you tried to take, Senna said. Choice. The ability to see other possibilities without being enslaved by them. The doors will need guardians, Atlas added, helping the old man to his feet. Someone who understands the danger of trying to exist in all realities at once. Rasputin looked at the doorways forming in the sky, stable, beautiful, terrifying in their potential. You want me to guard against my own mistake? Who better? Senna asked gently. You know the temptation, the cost. You can warn others, guide them. And if I refuse, if I try to reclaim my power? Atlas's form flickered with void wolf menace. Then we'll stop you, but I don't think you will. I think you're tired of being everything and nothing. I think you want to be someone again. The old man looked at his hands wrinkled, spotted with age, gloriously limited, and wept. The great hall of Ironhold had been rebuilt with impossible architecture walls that existed in multiple dimensions but chose to manifest in one, pillars of crystallized possibility that showed glimpses of other realities without allowing passage. It had been 3 weeks since the transformation, and representatives from every kingdom had come to witness what many called either miracle or catastrophe. Princess Valdris stood before the assembled crowd, her silver mail replaced with robes of deep purple that marked her new role. "The Order of the Iron Moon is dissolved," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "In its place, we establish the Threshold Guard protectors not from supernatural beings, but protectors of the balance between realities." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. At the high table, Atlas sat with Senna at his right hand, not as servant and king, but as equals, their combined authority evident in how reality itself seemed more solid around them. "For too long, we've feared what we didn't understand." Atlas stood, his voice carrying the weight of void and crown alike. "We tried to eliminate those who were different, to force a single reality on a world meant for multiplicity. The children born with silver eyes aren't cursed," Senna added, rising beside him. "Their evolution. The boundaries between worlds have been thinning for generations, and humanity has been adapting. The Veilwalker gifts, the Void Wolf curses, they're not aberrations, they're inheritance." Commander Rook stepped forward, and as he did, his form flickered. For years, he'd hidden his own nature, a quarter-blood Veilwalker whose grandmother had survived the purge by marrying human. "I am proof," he said, letting his heritage show in the subtle way reality bent around him. "We've been among you all along, hiding, suppressing, dying slowly from denying our nature." "And now?" Duke Cassius asked, his scarred face skeptical. "What do you propose? That we simply accept that reality itself has become optional?" "Not optional," Rasputin spoke from his position by the doors. In 3 weeks, he'd aged backward slightly, not to youth, but to a vital old age, his role as guardian giving him purpose that sustained him. "Reality is still reality, but now we acknowledge that it's one choice among many. The doors," he gestured to the subtle rifts that floated throughout the hall, each one leading to a slightly different version of this moment, "aren't for casual travel. Each passage costs something, changes something. They're for necessity, for those whose nature requires multiple realities to survive." "Like my daughter," a woman in the crowd spoke up. She pushed forward a girl of perhaps 7, whose eyes held the telltale silver flecks. "She's been seeing other worlds since birth. The physicians said she was mad, but—" Senna descended from the high table, kneeling before the child. "What's your name, little one?" "Maya," the girl whispered. "Sometimes I'm also Maria, and once I was Morning." "All beautiful names," Senna smiled, her veils extending gently to encompass the child. "Would you like to learn to choose which one you are each day?" The girl nodded eagerly. "This is what we offer," Atlas announced. "Training for those born between worlds. Safety for those who walk multiple realities. Purpose for those who thought they were broken." He paused, his silver eyes scanning the crowd. "And justice for those who would abuse these gifts." "What of the mate bond?" Princess Valdris asked, her tone carefully. "Neutral. The kingdom requires an heir, but if you mate fully with a Veilwalker—" "We've already mated," Atlas said simply, taking Senna's hand as she returned to his side. "Fully, completely. In all realities we could find. And I haven't consumed her." He smiled, the expression transforming his usually stern features. "Instead, we've created something new." Senna placed her free hand on her stomach, and through her veils, everyone could see it, the impossible child growing within her. Not human, not wolf, not Veilwalker, but something unprecedented, a being that existed in one reality by choice but could perceive all others. The first of a new kind. The prophecies spoke of convergence. Mordain the Truth-Seeker said, his ancient voice carrying wonder. "We thought it meant the end of supernatural beings, their absorption into humanity, but it meant transformation, evolution, synthesis. For those who choose it," Senna emphasized. "No one will be forced to change. Humans can remain human. Wolves can remain wolves. But for those caught between, those who've been hiding, suppressing, dying, there's another way." The snow fell differently now in Ironhold, each flake a tiny choice, a possibility that had chosen to manifest as frozen water rather than rain or mist or nothing at all. Senna stood in the rebuilt tower where Queen Alara had died, or chosen to die, or been pulled into death, all versions equally true, equally honored. She wasn't alone. Maya sat beside her, learning to sort through the realities she saw, choosing which visions to release as crystalline tears and which to keep as wisdom. Around them, a dozen other children practiced similar exercises, their gifts no longer hidden but celebrated, refined, integrated. Your Majesty, Maya said formally, then giggled. I mean, Senna. When will the baby choose to be born? Senna smiled, her hand on her swollen belly. The child within existed in a state of constant possibility, sometimes feeling like a boy, sometimes a girl, sometimes something beyond binary definition. Soon, when they're ready to choose a form, a moment, a reality to call home. Atlas appeared in the doorway, moving with the fluid grace of someone who'd finally accepted all aspects of his nature. His void wolf form no longer fought against his human side, they'd integrated into something seamless. The delegation from the Southern Realms has arrived. They're requesting an audience about establishing their own threshold doors. Tell them we'll meet them at tomorrow's dawn, Senna said, when the veils are thinnest and choices are clearest. He crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her head. Through their bond, she felt his contentment. The king who'd sworn never to mate now couldn't imagine existence without their connection. Any regrets? He asked, echoing their conversation from months ago. How could I? She turned in his arms, her veils wrapping around them both. I spent 3 years pretending to be nothing, hiding in shadows, crying alone where no one could hear. And you spent 7 years denying love, denying connection, denying half your nature. And now? Now we're teaching the world that hiding your true self isn't protection, it's poison, that the things we fear in ourselves might be the very gifts the world needs. Below in the courtyard, she could see Rasputin teaching a class of threshold guards, his centuries of experience now wisdom instead of weapon. Commander Rook trained others who'd discovered supernatural heritage, helping them integrate their gifts with their existing lives. Princess Valdris, who'd come hunting for a crown, had found instead a calling. She'd become the most skilled of the threshold guards, able to step between realities for heartbeats at a time to prevent paradoxes. The oracle sent another prophecy, Atlas mentioned, pulling a scroll from his coat. Want to hear it? Is it properly cryptic and unhelpful? Of course. He unrolled it and read. When the crying stops, the singing begins. When the hunger feeds, the void fills. When the choice is made, all choices become possible. Senna laughed, the sound harmonizing with itself across realities. I think that already happened. Or it's happening now. Or it will happen. All equally true, they said together. A cry interrupted them, not of sorrow but of joy. One of the children had managed to consciously choose between realities for the first time, solidifying from a flickering, uncertain form into a single, defined self. The other children cheered, their voices creating harmonies that shouldn't exist. You know what I realized? Atlas said, watching the celebration. My mother didn't die because she was mad. She was pulled through because she was changing, evolving, becoming something the world wasn't ready for. But her sacrifice created the cracks that let you through, that let us find each other, that let all of this become possible. Every ending is a beginning, Senna agreed. Every tear a doorway, every cry a call for connection. As if in response, their child moved within her, a sensation like reality shifting, like choice being made. Through her veils, she saw the moment approaching when their baby would choose to be born, not just in this reality but as an anchor point across many, a living bridge between worlds. The kingdom will never be the same, Atlas observed. No, Senna agreed, then smiled. It will be infinite. The snow continued to fall upward and downward and sideways. And in ways that had no names, as Ironhold transformed into something unprecedented. A kingdom where monsters walked openly, where humanity evolved consciously, where the void between worlds became a bridge rather than barrier. And in the tower, where a queen had fallen and a servant had cried, a king and his mate stood together, no longer hiding, no longer afraid, no longer alone. They discovered that the greatest power wasn't in being everything or nothing, but in choosing, moment by moment, who and what and where to be. The age of hiding was over. The age of integration had begun, and somewhere between realities, in the space where all possibilities existed, their story continued, not ended, but transformed, not finished, but infinitely beginning.